You're listening to the SEO Mindset Podcast. Now, we are not your typical how to do SEO podcast. No, we are not. With the help of our guests, we cover those all-important topics around career development, personal growth, and mental health for those working in the SEO industry. You got to be working on your own internal algorithm. Like what we did there. So if you like the sound of our podcast and you think this is a bit of me, shall we crack on with this week's episode?
If you're feeling pressure to create content for visibility, but it just doesn't sound like you anymore, this episode is for you. Today I'm joined by Erin Simmons to explore why we should stop creating for algorithms and impressions and start creating to build trust instead, and the role community plays in helping you do just that. Erin is Managing Director at the Women in Tech SEO community, a space known for being safe, inclusive and genuinely supportive. Both Sarah and I are members. Erin has had over 15 years of experience across marketing and analytics, and they now focus on understanding people and connecting them to the relationships and resources that support them the most. Before we get into the episode, if you're finding what Sarah and I creating is useful and would like to support the podcast, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, and then you'll never miss out on an episode. If you'd like to support us further, then hit the link to give us a one-off donation that will help us as we'll put it towards the running of the podcast. Now, let's get into the episode and talk to Erin. Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm very excited. Has it been almost a year since we've been talking about doing this?
Yes, we have had a series of bookings and cancellations, so I'm glad we're finally getting to do this.
It's a topic that evolved over time. It's not something that gets spoken about much. I feel many people will be feeling what we are going to talk about, but it's this tension between being creative, gaining visibility, which is huge, but at the same time building a personal brand and retaining that trust, both self-trust and the trust of the people that we reach. It's a tough thing to do.
It is.
Because there is so much scope to be creative. There's so many opportunities. And this period of time, unlike so many periods of time in the past, you can go online, you can talk about what you want to talk about, you've got a voice. You don't have to go to Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park and get on a soapbox to talk about what you want to say. You just go online and do it. But I feel that it's gone from a bit of fun and creativity to actually, I want this to perform for myself. And that's where things change.
Yeah,
What's
absolutely.
your view on that?
Yeah, I think content has become a commodity, and I feel like it's even becoming more of a commodity with the way we can now use AI to generate content. So I think with that has come this pressure to compete, which is always interesting. I think coming from a community background, competition feels, I don't want to say anti-community. I think competition is important in its own right, but it does feel like this competition almost with the algorithm and the visibility to get the impressions, to get the likes, to get the engagements, to get the comments. And I feel that every time I put a post out on social, I feel that every time I write something up and publish it. So I think there is now this seeing how much content exists out there and seeing in my feed the content that's doing well from an engagement perspective. There's all of that mixed together that is applying this pressure of, am I writing because I am passionate about this topic and I want to help other people, or am I writing because I want to get likes and visibility? And I think for me, it's probably a combination of both. But yeah, I think even through this conversation, it's going to be interesting to see what it feels like for me after talking this through with you and becoming more aware of, am I writing for the likes and the visibility? Am I writing something that I know and I love, that I want other people to be supported about, or to put out there to find other people who may even just be interested in it?
Absolutely. When I started in the coaching field, creating content was much simpler. And it was at the age where you say, oh, here are 5 things that you should know about imposter syndrome, that type of post. But there was no pressure. For me, the challenge was actually recording and posting, and that it was about a confidence thing, that I can step into this world. Over the years, that got better. I got more comfortable doing that. But lately, it feels as if it's just so much harder. And then it went from a passion to a business. So the importance of that content doing well is more important.
Yeah.
And you sort of lose yourself. There's a danger of losing yourself to a version or a subversion of yourself that feeds the algorithm, rather than the version of you that feels passionate about the topic.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And yeah, that's definitely something I've felt over time.
How do you get to the point where this isn't going to be able to answer the question in the 30, 40 minutes that we're talking? So in this situation, you want to write something, you want it to feel real, you want it to perform well and to be you. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, the truth is that I'm not quite sure. I think that if I think about some of the things that I've been, I guess there is a difference too in like long form, short form, right? So like social posts and things like that. I think social posts for me probably do feel much more, okay, I want to write this in a way where it reaches folks, and folks, I know this is such a noisy place, so it should be short. I'm thinking about the structure and the format of it. And I think that I would much rather switch that around, where I find myself, if I'm second guessing what I am putting out there, it's like I'm editing as I write it. And then I finish, and then I go back and I read it again and I edit it again. So it's almost like this over analyzing of, is this scannable enough? Is this going to be able to stand out amongst everything else that people are seeing in their feed right now, enough that somebody will take the time to look through it and read it? Whereas I feel like the things that have felt best for me a lot of times aren't even writing. To me, it's creating, and I love creating like images, videos on Canva. I just think it's fun. I like doing like silly things with it. Like I think we put out like a merch hat randomly a couple weeks ago, and I just took a picture of myself, a silly picture, and I cropped the hat on it. And that was just fun. And just the copy that I wrote for that post on Instagram was, I don't even remember what it looked like. I didn't even think about it. For me, it was fun to just create something silly, and that felt like me. Whereas if I'm writing a post about an SEO update, which I shouldn't be doing because I'm not an SEO, and there's that lack of self-trust coming up that we'll talk about more. But that stuff takes me a lot longer. I'm overthinking it. I'm editing as I go. I'm re-editing. So I think, I don't quite have a balance of that. And again, I think this is so nice to have this conversation with you, because I think it's going to help me become more aware about what feels good, what feels authentic, versus what am I actually writing for likes, for engagement, to be seen amongst the commodity of content that's already out there.
And it's interesting that you said Canva felt like me, whereas SEO doesn't feel like me, and that's the differential you're using. I would argue that even when I'm writing content as a coach about a particular topic, there was a period of time where I was beginning to feel less and less like me, because there is also a huge amount of content on how you should create a hook and what sort of structure you should have, and how much blank space and not blank space, and la di da di da. So from the heart, I might write something about this morning's post was, if you've got to a Monday and you've had the whole weekend and are feeling tired, it's not just about you get enough rest. There might be something else underneath the surface. Maybe your own wants have been, you've denied yourself the time to do what you really want to do. So that's what I was feeling, because I was actually feeling that this weekend was busy. There were things that I didn't get done that I wanted to get done. And I felt I had deprived myself of those opportunities. However, then I started thinking, oh, is this hook strong enough? Should I write it like this? Should I write it like that? How about I tweak it here? And then you say, and then it gives you this stuff. But by the end of it, I'm wondering whether there's also something about the energy that you have when you post something. Because by that point, I wasn't feeling so good about the post. It didn't feel like me. And if it didn't feel like me, and it's not that there was anything wrong. I wasn't lying in it. It's not that I didn't agree with what I was saying, but it didn't feel like me. And that's where I think there's another layer of, I don't trust it. Will it land?
Yeah, and I think it's like there's two things that I heard in there that I feel like, yeah, that's what it feels like for me. And the first is it's that overthinking. Like you get done and it's like the overthinking. And then it's almost as you were ending, I was like, are we editing a certain part of ourselves out of it when we go back through and do that editing? And it's interesting because I have spent my career alongside a lot of business founders, agency founders, and I've sat there as they've fired off a social post or written a blog post. And the thing that I consistently see is it's just a stream of consciousness and a send. There's oftentimes not even a reread. And these are folks where I'm like, yes, I read this and I get excited about what I'm reading. But there is this self-trust, I would call it, that I see in them. And it's also this very like unedited raw version that I think is that kind of authenticity that we talk about. That being said, I think it's very hard to put yourself out there in that way, right? You do need to have a lot of self-trust. And maybe there is something even with, okay, that may not have been the way these folks were always writing. Maybe they got to a point where they felt comfortable enough to do that. But when it comes to being visible, those are the times when I think it is often where I know that I start to overthink, okay, I'm going to be sending this out into the ether and maybe 5 people see it, but maybe 5,000 people see it. And I don't want to look silly, I think is the thing that always comes to my mind. That's one of my self criticisms is not enough and silly and all of these things. In order to prevent that from happening, I edit a certain part of myself out of it. And as we were talking about, it's like the Canva, the silliness, the videos, that's actually what feels like me. Being silly, joking around, that feels like me. And that's not always, especially in some of the like more corporate roles that I've had in the past, that's not always acceptable. Oftentimes it's baked into the culture that that's not something that is going to help you get ahead. So yeah, I think it's interesting to think about when we're doing this overthinking and editing, are we editing a part of ourself that feels good out of what we're creating?
I love that. And I just want to pick up one point that you said about the individuals that you worked with and they just wrote and hit send. And you said something like, perhaps they had not always written like that. They had got to a point where they were able to do that, which to some people may sound as if over the years they had got better at writing. Is it that they had got better at writing, or is it that they had got more comfortable in their own skin and more self-trust and therefore were comfortable? And I think a little bit of it may come from age. I'm less worried about what people think about me now than I was when I was in my 20s and 30s. You get to a point you think, do you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I feel that when you can just write from your gut, from your heart, from your soul, and just hit send and not factor in too much your mind, surely that's got to be raw and personal and authentic. And that should land better, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think in theory it should, and I have seen it in these cases. And I guess I'm not too sure. Maybe these folks have always just been like, send. Like it could be
Mhm.
something that just has always been that self-trust is ingrained in them. I think everyone has a different path to earning or having self-trust. Some people may never earn it to the capacity that they want it. Some people may have always had it. Some people might work really hard to gain it over time, lose it a little bit, gain it back. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the path was for these different folks, but I do think there is something to the freedom it also gives your mind. Like,
Mhm.
I think as we're talking about writing things and pressing send, the next thing I do is a few minutes later, I open it. I read it again. Do I want to edit it? Has it done anything? Has anyone commented? So there is this overthinking that even saying now, I do feel just a little bit like, should I have admitted that out loud? Like but I think that's something that I can't imagine other people don't do who have similar levels of self-trust to mine or similar levels of, on the flip side, self-doubt that I have.
It's bizarre. We are in the age now where trust is so rare. People
Mm,
are mistrusting so much of what's being posted. And it almost feels as if we need to shed some of that overthinking and shed some of that analyzing how we write the post and just hit send. And to what you said, should I have said that? Shouldn't I have said that? I think one thing that works for me is having very clear rules of what I will say and what I won't say online.
mm,
So won't post any pictures of the children or the grandchildren,
mm-hmm,
for example. I've never posted a picture of my husband, even though I have spoken about him. I wanted to ask his permission to put a picture of us on the Brighton deck because that's part of the story. But yeah, I'll ask him tonight, see what he says. But do you think that would help having some guidelines, ways, a bit like WTS ways of working,
mm.
ways of being like a community guidelines, but writing guidelines?
Yeah, I think that two thoughts came to mind. I was like, I think that could help. But then I immediately thought, I think that I'm quite different in that aspect, and I'm learning that balance of what I do want to share and what I feel comfortable sharing and what I don't. But to me, I think that I have a much more open door into just like my personal life than and my social presence than I think other folks I know do. So I think having some thinking about that, I could still put those guidelines in place. But then my next thought was, I wonder if that would just create overthinking for me on another
Mm,
layer. So yeah, I think it's always worth experimenting with things. But to me, there's something that feels like almost, I would love to get to a place where I'm just sharing what's top of mind. And I trust myself enough to know that I'm not oversharing or I'm not. But I guess again, now I'm going back and forth. That gets back to maybe it's not like guidelines for me or as much as like that WTS way as it is like the values piece of it that is
mm,
in the WTS way, which is the code of conduct for the community that Desmond and I are both a part of, Women in Tech SEO. But there's the values in there, and I think that there's something to that. Like running through a while back, I did an exercise with myself of businesses have mission, vision, values. Like, what's mine? If I wanted to build that personally for me, not for my personal brand, but just for me in my life. But I do think there is something about thinking about what I'm sharing through the lens of my values. Is it kind? Is it judgment free? Is it curious? Is it leaving the room open for curiosity of others and other opinions? So there's something to, yeah, I think how you're sharing guidelines that could be, is this running it through like my values lens? And the more that I would trust that, I think the easier it would be for me to speak off the cuff or to write something and just press send without revisiting and re-editing and all of that.
There's so much in the conversation we've had so far, and there's no definitive answer. It'll look different for everyone. What's inspiring me is I want to be one of those people that can just hit send, just write from the heart, from the gut, from the soul, and hit send and or post and be done with it. And that over time, some would flop and some would do well, but it would just build that trust in myself even more rather than thinking and overthinking and all of the time it takes. And we say we're time poor, but this is hugely time consuming. And you maybe have a period of a few months and just see what happens and what sort of relationships I end up building online, because again, it is about that trust. And what makes someone trust someone online? It's not AI generated content, is it?
No, I don't think so. And yeah, I think with what you're saying as well is the connections that you would make doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not about the number of likes. Like I remember doing a post a while back on, my favorite author is Octavia Butler. She wrote a lot of science fiction books, and there's a lot of what she writes inspires me and how I think about community. And I just put that out there in a social post, and the engagement was abysmal. But there were two people who I started conversations with who were like, yes, this should be required community building reading. This should be. So it could also be, if we're not thinking about the visibility from a quantity game, if we're thinking about it from how are we putting things out that attract the right people and relationships to us, that should be more important than, getting 5,000 eyes. If you get 5 of the right eyes on there, what does that do to attract these people who have similar interests, right? Similar curiosities to you? And how does that actually end up being better than a post that has all of these eyeballs and likes and engagement, but then fizzles out? It's the durability of a relationship versus the pop of something that trends for an hour.
And that is a really great reminder for all of us. It's the longevity of those connections. It's the depth of those connections. It's the value they can add to you and you can add to their lives or their communities. And I feel, going full circle to where this conversation started, running after impressions probably isn't the best way to, whether it is building a business online, building a personal brand online, whatever it is that you are looking for in that space, that probably isn't the way to do it. The old-fashioned way, build relationships.
Yeah, it's always coming back to that.
So you touched on community and how community can help. We've got to the point of having a break right now. I would love to explore more about that after the break.
Sounds great.
Hi, Tasmin here. Are you looking to take your career to the next level? Be more visible, earn more, but also take care of your well-being and have work-life harmony? Well, I can help you because I'm offering you a free 30-minute consultancy call. Together we can go through where you want to be and how to get there. Simply click on the link in the show notes, fill in a form, and I'll get back to you.
You probably already recognise this voice, but Sarah here. Are you enjoying what me and Tasmin are doing and fancy supporting the podcast? Well, it just so happens that you can. Now, for the same price as a Starbucks, Costa, or your favourite coffee shop coffee, you can give us a one-off tip or a monthly donation. If you fancy doing that, follow the link in the show notes. why not also help us share the podcast? Get the word out there. Share us with your friends, colleagues, family, anyone who you think would benefit from our podcast.
So welcome everyone and Erin to part 2 of this very interesting conversation. Erin, before the break, we were talking about this pressure to build visibility, to develop your career, build your business, so on and so forth, and a brand, and how sometimes it can feel like we're pulling ourselves away from our real self and showing up as almost like our digital self. And that can erode trust online, and how community can help in this. Now, what I find really interesting in your story is that you talked to me that your voice didn't grow through this process of optimization and overthinking and rewriting and writing. It grew through community. What role has community played in you finding your voice?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting you said that my voice didn't grow through like the optimization. I would actually argue my voice shrank through the optimization and the efficiency, starting my career in marketing analytics and tying myself throughout my career to a lot of executives and founders where they had these voices that for a lot of times my job was to help amplify that. Actually, I think within that, I lost a bit of my voice and maybe took on others, maybe just quieted myself a bit. And I think for me, the turning point was actually a non-work community. So when I was living in Seattle, I took part in a weekend camp called Rain City Rock, and it is a community of musicians. And before this, I had played the trumpet when I was a kid, but I hadn't. I love music. I go to a lot of shows. I listen to a lot of music, but I never thought in my 30s that I would become a musician. And they offered the opportunity to have a weekend where you go, they place you with a band, and they teach you an instrument you never had to play before. So I picked the drums. And you go through the whole thing, and then at the end, you go on a stage in a bar in Seattle and you play, and the whole community's there, and your friends and your family. And it's just this experience that absolutely makes you feel like a rock star. And I think I attribute a lot of me. It's when I think about finding my voice, it's literally being loud. They gave me permission to be loud. They gave me permission to hit the drums as hard as I wanted. And from the moment you walk in, they call you a musician. So they're giving you these titles that, for me, thinking what I said earlier, in my 30s, I never thought that I could become a drummer, a musician. And they give you that title as you walk in the door, even if you haven't ever touched an instrument before. And there's something about that permission, so permission to be, permission to become, that I think really helped me start to not just find my voice, but find my people. And as I gathered amongst these people, I was able to be loud again. I was able to share what I was thinking about this song that we're writing, and try new things and mess up and all of these things. And it's that very idea of there's no mistakes, right? I don't think Bob Ross was popular here. He's a painter in the States on TV when I was a kid. And he said, there's no mistakes. There's just happy little accidents. So I think having this practice space, which I think of communities a lot as practice spaces, to just play and be creative in a way that just has visibility amongst a group of people that agree that they are there for the same purpose, and they're creating this space where it's okay to just try. There's something that can shift in people. And I know for me, there was something that shifted in me from having that experience.
There's so much about what you just said that I love the phrase permission to become, because I feel community. So for me, community is a combination of friends and family where I feel safe. I don't have to perform. I can just be me, same identity. In fact, in a way, it's almost refreshing that I will always be mum. who whips up a meal, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. That's part of me that I don't want to change. I don't want to evolve. I'm okay. However, I also need the community that allows me to grow, and that is more where it's a professional community or an online community or peer-to-peer community. And when you can have both, when you can have that feeling of safety through family and feeling that you have a place to grow, that's perfect combination.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just one community is not going to be able to be everything to you. Like one person is not going to be able to be everything to you. You need that diversity of groups to bring all these different pieces of yourself together. But yeah, I think it is finding what is that core, what are those core values that, and this way of being that feels good to you that you will bring into all these spaces.
So going from entering the camp, you'd never played the drums before,
Mm-hmm.
to going on stage and playing. Okay, first of all, if I was to learn an instrument, it would be the drums. When I dream about being a musician, it is being a drummer. How did that feel? Like, it feels
I mean,
powerful.
yeah, I think powerful is a great word for it. It feels confident. I remember the first time I went afterwards I started taking drum lessons, and there was something about that, the way that when you hit something like that, you feel the vibrations in your body, you hear it. It's like a full sensory experience. And walking home from that felt different. I felt my feet hitting the pavement in a different way. So I think there was a very visceral feeling through that camp and through learning the drums. And I can't wait for when you learn the drums and maybe we start like a 2-drum band, because I feel like that's what's happening next. But there was something that was
Yeah.
very like confidence boosting, but also just there was something where, dare I say, like it just made me feel more.
Sarah may well beat me because already she's already taking drumming lessons, but I
Triple
get
drum
the
band.
drum band. I feel that it could be quite liberating, that you just let go.
Yeah, and I think earlier I said I felt like I quieted myself. I quieted my voice. I quieted
Mm.
my thoughts, even to myself. Yeah, there was something about being loud that was very liberating, where in many spaces, online, in person, in work, sometimes in family, in all of these different situations, we're actually trained a bit, maybe not told directly, maybe sometimes told directly, to be quiet. And there was something very liberating about being welcomed into a space and being given permission to be loud and not be perfect. And I think that really was this very powerful, visceral, liberating experience for me.
So you mentioned about how you were given that identity, that you are a musician, you were given that permission, that there are no mistakes. So just, what was it? You said it just
No mistakes, just happy little accidents.
happy little accents. I would imagine that would lend itself for you to feel safe in that environment. Was there anything else that about that space that made you feel safe to really express yourself?
Yeah, I think there was a code of conduct. It was communicated throughout the day, before the day, and it's something we do in our community. But there is something about the way those expectations are set. So it's almost like knowing what the space is for and literally defining what the space is for. And then knowing that everyone there has seen that and is in agreement with that, there is a safety in expectation setting. So there, I do think were like quite a few things that they did really well that just help the space feel, yeah, safe. And it is the sense of belonging that you get in that. And I do think there is something to having niche communities. Priya Parker is an author and writes a lot about community building. I think her one of her books is called The Art of Gathering. And I've seen her talk about the 3 intersections is a perfect number of things for a community to have. I think that Rain City Rock Camp had that. And it was everyone is there because they love music, right? And they want to learn how to play an instrument. It was all people of marginalized genders, and there was something very comforting and just this group of people who just traditionally have been the ones who have been told to be quiet most, like coming together to make a lot of noise. And it was a very like queer welcoming space as well. So I think it had these three intersections where it's like, we all have these things in common. And not that you need them, but there is something about being in a room with people who have had shared experiences to you that just lowers your defenses. It's why we say at WTS, we hope that our community doesn't have to exist one day. Not that it doesn't need to exist for people to have a safety and sense of belonging to have a successful career and grow in their career, that it doesn't need to. It doesn't mean that it won't, because there is something so special about having community with shared experiences and what that can do for just your nervous system, for your just connection with other people. But yeah, I think the more you niche down in a community and have two, maybe even three intersections of commonality, I think that safety and that sense of belonging is going to grow.
I'd never thought of it like that, but now that you say it, makes complete sense. Complete sense. There's a lot of richness in how you have described your experience of community through lived experience, through the reading that you're doing, the work that you are undergoing. How is all of that shaped how you see WTS and its evolution? Obviously, at the end, it will no longer exist. That's the aim. But in the journey towards that.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that feels like a big question. I'll try to narrow it down a bit. But I think in general, I think a lot with WTS about how are we helping people become. So a speaker, a writer, a manager, a leader, an individual contributor, what do people come to WTS for? We have our collective career goals, which are we aim to help people in their careers by amplifying them, by providing education, opportunities, and connection. How do we use these four components to help people become who they want to become? And I think that there's a lot of what I felt and experienced in Rain City Rock Camp that kind of informs that. Walking into a room and having someone say, "Oh, okay, so what's your name? Erin? Okay, so you are a drummer." There's something about getting that title and that sense of belonging where someone just is, yeah, you already are a speaker, right? You already are a writer. How do we not just welcome folks and give them permission, but then how are we also, okay, there are skills and there are things you need to do to get on a stage, right? How are we helping to nurture that along the way to help with the education, help actually get them opportunities, connect them to people that can help them? So I think when I think about how that shaped my thinking around WTS, it is a lot of how are we helping people become?
That for anyone's evolution, it doesn't have to. I don't need to want to. Let me start again. I don't need to want the same thing as you,
Ah,
but it's about the progress. It's about feeling that there is growth, and that doesn't always mean growth in career, growth in yourself, growth in your trust, growth in your confidence, growth in identity. There are so many different facets to it, but
mm-hmm,
having that space where, like I said, WTS, the conference space feels very different to other conference spaces. And part of that almost feels homely. Even though
mm.
it's a huge venue, it almost feels like you're safe, you're home, you're with other people that you know. And as time goes on, those connections build, and that just amplifies that feeling.
And what do you think it is that you
Hmm.
feel different in that space than in other conference spaces?
I feel okay. So I'm not somebody who likes, even though I would like to play the drums, I think that's more about feeling liberated than the noise. I
Mm-hmm.
like calm. I like
Mm.
things that are calm and quiet. Most of our home, even the decor, it's all quite relaxing, and that helps me. I like people. I like connecting. I'll do a bit, and but I think the first time I came to the conference, I wanted to pray, and there was a prayer room,
Mm-hmm.
and it was okay to go and pray because over the years, I didn't grow up praying. My family wasn't particularly religious, but over the years, my timetable is set by, I don't do it purposely. I've just evolved a bit like that. So my husband and I will often say, "Oh, what time should we leave to go and get a coffee?" And we will use the prayer times to figure out what we're doing in our lives. And when I went to the prayer area, there was another person praying there because you got to figure out which direction.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Oh, it's in that direction." That to me was huge
Mm.
because I could be me.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
there
so
was a
it was a
space where
combination.
you could,
Yeah,
it was a
yeah.
combination.
So it was that peacefulness, acceptance of who I am,
Mm.
not even acceptance. It was thought about. There'll be because there was a quiet room and there was a prayer room.
Mm-hmm.
So if you, and also growth. The topics that we were hearing about, it wasn't just about learn more SEO. It was learn some SEO and do this and hear about this. And there was this all encompassing set of talks that was just, yeah, for me. So I suppose those would be the three: the peaceful and calm element, the growth element, and the ability to turn up as me.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, that's what we started talking about in the beginning too. How are we being creative in ways that feel like you're showing up as you? And
Yeah,
it does sound like this community space gave you the opportunity to show up as you in a few different facets, right? Like it had the calm that you feel like soothes you and makes you feel comfortable. It had a space where you went and you found someone else and felt this like shared experience as well. And it had topics that weren't just the usual, let us teach you 5 things about SEO and AI search, but the other topics we need as well about growth and all of these bits. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. But yeah, I feel like you hit all of those pieces of community and how you felt at WTS Fest.
Erin, this has been such a great conversation. We are coming to the end of our time together. We started talking about building visibility, but in a way that you don't erode your own self trust and trust online. If you were to give any piece of advice to anyone listening who is feeling the same, what would that be?
I think if you do go and you find a community where maybe don't shout into the social void to start. Maybe find a community that feels safe where you can show up and share these things and be more creative in these practice spaces with these agreed upon values and code of conduct. And that's a place where you can start to practice and build that self-trust.
That's a brilliant idea. That just brings everything that we've spoken about all together. Thank you. Oh, very well done, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you.
But in terms of general, so we ask all our guests to, if they have any career advice that they've been given that they would like to pass on to everyone listening.
I think the thing I always say, but now it feels like this conversation has changed that. I had a manager once say, I handed a report and they said, "This is great. I love this, exactly this, but give it to me in half the words." And I think after this conversation, I want to just flip that and say, write the thing that feels like it's you, whether it's maybe it is long-winded, but that's how you feel it needs to be explained. Maybe it's just recording a video and sending that instead of writing it up, but just do it in a way that feels good to you. And hopefully when you put that out there, it attracts more of the people and relationships that will just really help you.
I'm definitely going to take that advice.
I need to take that advice.
Okay, we'll buddy up. And one last thing. Who's somebody that we should be following right now? Somebody's doing some great work.
Yeah, I think the person that comes top of mind to my head, but I think maybe your followers have already followed, is Arij Abu Ali. I think if I can give a second, our marketing executive, Himi, is brilliant, and she is the voice behind Women in Tech SEO's social media. She's been doing a lot of just really great work in terms of trying to make sure that our social isn't a one-way broadcast and our marketing isn't a one-way broadcast. It's more of a conversation. Yeah, I think Himi would be a great person to follow.
I second both of those. Erin, thank you so much for such a lovely conversation. I know it took us a long time to get here, but I'm glad we persevered. Thanks for all of your wisdom, and hopefully we'll have you back on the podcast soon.
That would be great. Thank you, Tasman. I appreciate it.